In this video I'm doing a two-page layout. One is a traditional page and the other page is the pocketed. So since there's a lot of things here, I've got and listed the items and put the times next to several of them so you could jump ahead if certain things interested you more than others.
Hi there! Today I'm working on a two-page layout. I'm going to have one traditional page with a couple of 4x6 photos. I haven't done a sketch for this. I'm trying to decide whether I want my photos here or here. And I think I'm going to have my title here and then a border down on the bottom. For the other page, I'm going to be using some pocketed page sleeves that I got from 2Ps in a Bucket. These are American Crafts. They're discontinued at 2Ps, but they may be available other places, and of course lots of places have the pocketed page protectors. This one I liked because it has 3 landscape 4x6 and 2 portrait 4x6, and then the little 2x12 section over here as well. Now, these are photos of the Biltmore house. I took the architect's tour back in the spring. And right now I've just got some photos kind of stuck in here just to see how they look. It's a lot of house at the moment. So I know I'm going to take out 1 or 2 of these at least. Like these two are pretty similar, and I could probably pull one of those out and replace it with some pattern paper or some cardstock. I have these cards that were left from my cardstock class, some embossing that I had for that class. So I'm going to take probably one of these, and I may combine it with some of the pattern papers that I'm using. This is the Pebbles Family Ties collection. It goes really well with the photos. Now for the border down here, this background paper is a piece of designer paper. It's not from Family Ties, from another collection, but it coordinated so well, and I've used almost everything that came with this, so I thought I would use it for the background. However, I want my border to kind of look like the house. I want to kind of replicate this finish where we have all these carved items here, and I thought I would do that using this damask mask from Prima and some modeling paste. So I'll be doing that first. I want a tone-on-tone look, so instead of doing this on the green paper, I'm going to do it on this cardstock, and that has the advantage of, if it doesn't go well, I haven't messed up my main paper for the layout. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do to get ready for this layout, and then we'll start pulling some things into the pockets and kind of making the 2 pages coordinate.
So my supplies besides my mask are some modeling paste and some ink. I'm going to be putting this on the Sahara Sand cardstock. I'm using a brown ink because once it's mixed with white it will get a lot lighter, and I'm looking for a taupe kind of look. My mask is slightly less than 6 inches wide, the space that's actually going to be covered, and it has this little border, you know, around the edges. So what I need to do is to start from the center and work out on each side, and I'll have to dry in between. So what I'm doing now is just I've marked the center of the piece of cardstock, and I'll use that to line up with my mask in a minute. Taking the modeling paste and mixing in just a couple of drops of this Close to Cocoa ink, which was a light brown color from Stampin' Up. It's a little bit of a reddish brown, and unfortunately it's coming out a little redder than I wanted it to be. It's not quite the same color as the buildings and the photos. So I'm adding some basic gray color ink, figuring that the gray will tone it down some. And that does seem to be helping and making it look a little bit more like a taupe color and less reddish toned. So I've got my mask in position here, and I'm just holding it in place. Once you get some modeling paste on there, then it will stay. And I do this a lot slower than it's showing in the video. I go pretty slow doing this to make sure that my mask doesn't move. I want a pretty thin layer because the mask itself is surprisingly thick. When you pull off the mask, you'll see that there's more depth there than you would expect. So I'm wiping off a lot of the excess modeling paste because I don't want it to be real globby looking. I want it to be kind of thin so that it doesn't add too much bulk to my scrapbook page. And then I'll just gently peel the mask away, and these heavy products like modeling paste really make beautiful designs. Now I've got a small piece of paper. I'm going to do just one of the little damask designs and then use this later on for an embellishment. And we'll set these aside to dry. And now this one is dried and I'm ready to do the other side. I had to let it completely dry so that my mask wouldn't mess up one side. And I'm looking to see where the top and the bottom are so that I can line up the mask going across. So I need to have those little kind of half circles at the top, just those showing, and just the very, very bottom of those little three pointed things on the design. I'm used to doing this with fabric and to line things up, and it's a similar kind of process. It's very carefully getting some of the modeling paste on there just like we did before so that it will stay in place. Okay, and it's on there and I'm peeling it up. You'll notice a color difference, but that's just because one side is dry. Once they dry, they'll both be the same color. And the middle is pretty close. I don't think I could have gotten any better. I can see some minor differences there in the center, but that's about as close as I think I could.
Alright, up until this point, this has been my plan here. I've got green background paper and this green strip that's from the Pebbles collection. It's the back side of one of the other pages. Planning to use this embossed cardstock here. And all of this is based on the fact that I had green in these two photos. And I wanted to use some of these Pebbles papers because I thought they matched really well. The challenge though is, to me, they didn't really go with my design here, which is designed to go with the photos. So that kind of led me over here looking at these photos and realizing there's no green in these photos at all. So I've got, it seemed like I was trying to force something in. So I'm going to switch things around a little bit and see if you like this better. Like this a lot better, and the reason is the teal color picks up the colors here that are in the house here and here and here, and it's a nice coordination to this more taupey looks as opposed to being so opposite of the green, because the only thing that was really green was just the grass and a little bit in my sweater. So I think these papers work well. I need something for the strip here, and I was going to go to my 12 by 12 papers when I realized the perfect thing to put in that strip would be to cut out this section underneath my border and put that here. So I'm just going to trim this page down and then glue all these things together and take a section of this and put it underneath the border because I need it to be 2 inches, and I've got more than 2 inches of space there. And then I can have that color continue over, and I can still add some things here. Now whether I'll get to use some of these, I may, because they're not bad with it. I don't know. I may have enough embossing with this kind of thing that I don't want those. So I may not use any of the original papers except for the back of this and kind of take this page in a different direction.
So for my title, I have painted 3 chipboard letters in a blue paint, and I'm trying to come up with a design that looks similar to that designer paper that I'll be using on the layout. I have a stamp from Basic Gray that has sort of scallopy design to it, and I'm just inking it up and laying the letters upside down on it. I find that works the best with the background stamps, pressing those in with a piece of scrap paper, and then there's my design in a little bit darker color. Now to put the page together, what I did was, as I said, cut the bottom off and then just glued each of the sections together using the grid paper to help me line things up. Sometimes I put a scrap piece of paper behind, but in this case I just didn't feel like I needed it. Laying the title out. And what's bothering me though is that the top border looks very plain. So I thought I might repeat this design up at the top, but just use some ink with my damask Prima stencil. Sorry, having trouble getting the words out. And this is just some darker blue-green ink. It's Bermuda Bay from Stampin' Up, which is a discontinued color. I keep all my discontinued colors because a lot of times the discontinued colors work really well with current papers from other companies. And that's giving me a nice little subtle design. I debated though whether to do it on both the left and the right or just do the left, but I don't have anything on that right hand page to correspond to it, so I decided to go ahead and do the right corner as well. And again, just sponging it around the corner, not really trying to get a full damask design, but just to kind of give that impression and fill up that corner. We'll zoom in here so you can see that a little bit closer. And also what we're going to be doing with the title. I've added some of that designer paper on the top and the bottom of the photos. And for the title, I got this idea from Sue Althouse's blog and class, and you can find out more information about that on my blog. I'm wanting to spread my title out so that it forms a block. And I'll be putting down first the thickest letters and then adding the others on top of it. I'm trying to give the impression there of a roof line. And I'm going to use a little strip of gray paper above and below. It's the same paper that I put underneath my damask border on the bottom. But I'll first need to glue the letters in TOP down since they're the widest letters, and then I'll use everything else, use those as a guide for how wide the strip can be and the other letters can be. Those are glued down and I'm ready to put the vellum on. What I did was do my journaling on vellum, and I've continued my border across, just the same cardstock papers going over there, and I'm going to do a little bit of journaling underneath that. When it comes to vellum, it's great to have a place to hide your ink, or your glue, but if you don't, you can hide it just by putting little dots of glue underneath the words that are on the vellum. So this was just printed out on my regular printer, and I just tucked tiny little bit of glue underneath the words and it doesn't show. Now on this side I repeated the border punched area that I had with that same gray cardstock, and then I can put my glue up where that cardstock is going to cover along the top. So the vellum doesn't need to be glued all the way down because it's glued at the top and it's going to be inside the pocket. And I'll do the same kind of gluing under the words with some text that's underneath or that's on top of the picture above. Now this design is going to be an embellishment, so I'm trimming around the edges of it. This was the one we created earlier. Just going around the edges, and then I'll put that on the layout. I'm looking at some Posco bind it. I wanted to use the Biltmore House name somewhere on this, and I thought it would look nice to use the logo, and I found an old brochure for the house, and I can't fit the entire thing into my little frame there, but I can get most of it, and I of course know what that means, so I'll put that on the left-hand page, and on the right-hand page I'm taking this damask design that I've cut out, and I've got an old die cut that I'm just going to use to kind of help it have some stability, or look like it has some stability, and a brad. The brad is going to need to go through the middle of it so it has somewhere for the prongs to go, since this is all going to glue on top of the pocketed page. I want this to go over a couple of the photos. One, because it was just going to look better that way, and also to kind of bring everything together so it doesn't look like all these individual little pockets. It looks like everything is part of one page. And I'll add that with some dimensional adhesive. Just deciding where it needs to go there. It doesn't cover up too much of my picture. There's the dimensional adhesive. I also have a date sticker, and I play a little bit here trying to decide where to put the date, and I end up putting it near that big block of journaling.
So here's our completed page. We've got the border that we did with the modeling paste, and then repeated that element over here, and I'll show you some close-ups of that. Repeated this border in a few places, and did the title with the letters all spread out. And I really didn't end up using a lot of pattern paper. I felt like with this here that I just didn't need a lot of additional pattern paper. I did mask a little bit of the same design up here at the top to give that a little more interest. So let's look at some close-ups of the page. And the texture of this, I don't know how well that's coming through on the camera. Use the logo, or part of the logo, in the frame there. And then my pocketed page, I kept this kind of piece simple, just sort of to make a continuation from the other page, and then use that embellishment here, added the sticker on top, kind of, but both of these things sort of bringing the photos together so it's not all individual components. So there's not a lot of embellishment, but still a good way to capture, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 photos on a 2-page spread. So thank you for joining me today. And I hope you'll check out my blog for more information and description of the class that I have ongoing.